Hi all, and welcome to another info-packed episode of the Leading Safely podcast. It's hard to believe, but this is actually episode 12, which means I started this journey 3 months ago now. Time has really flown by, and there's still so much to cover. So let's get into this very timely episode on the release of Safe Work Australia's new model code of practice on psychosocial hazards at work. Now, I'm not going to be reading the code of practice word for word. It is 54 pages long, so not only would you fall asleep listening to me, but these episodes are designed for you to be able to get something useful from listening in whilst commuting, cooking, working, or going about your everyday life. Plus, you can all access a copy of the code via the Safe Work Australia website. What I am going to do though is a quick overview on what psychosocial hazards are, how they can be identified, and some actions which can be implemented to help control those types of hazards in your workplace. To begin with, the definition of psychosocial hazards that's covered off in the code are the hazards that arise from or in relation to the design or management of work, the working environment or plant at a workplace, or workplace interactions or behaviours, and may cause psychological or physical harm. And this harm that is being referred to means conditions such as anxiety or depression, or PTSD from a mental health perspective. And then from the physical side of things, it might include musculoskeletal injuries, chronic diseases, or physical injury following fatigue-related workplace incidents. Some examples of these psychosocial hazards include job demands, lack of role clarity, inadequate rewards and recognition, poor organisational justice, remote or isolated work, poor physical environment, as well as all the known players such as bullying, harassment, violence or aggression. The code goes into the legislative duties of a PCBU, good old Section 19 of the Work Health and Safety Act on primary duty of care. The Work Health and Safety Regulations, Division 11, on psychosocial risks, and the Work Health and Safety Regulations Part 3.1, Managing Risks to Health and Safety. Obviously, under the regs, to manage psychosocial risks, a duty holder must identify reasonable foreseeable hazards that could give rise to psychosocial risks, eliminate risks so far as reasonably practicable, and if it's not reasonably practicable to eliminate the risks, then minimise the risk so far as reasonably practicable, and maintain implemented control measures so they remain effective, and review and, if necessary, revise those control measures to maintain, so far as reasonably practicable, a work environment that is without risk to health and safety. So, now that I've done that mouthful, how do you go about identifying psychosocial hazards in the first instance? Like all hazard reporting, you can do a number of things, including consulting with your workers. If your workers are talking about being stressed or burnt out, or perhaps feeling like a failure for not meeting a particular deadline, then these are red flags and these are psychosocial hazards which will need to be addressed. Remember, when speaking with your workers, the way that one describes something might be super different to the way that another one does. So please make sure you allow for these differences and aim to get to the underlying cause. You could use a survey or some sort of tool that you can send out to your workers. Remember that workers may be more inclined to provide open and honest information if they can remain anonymous. This is also a great option if you have workers that are across multiple sites. If you're a large organisation, sending out a survey monkey to identify hazards just won't cut the mustard though. You may want to facilitate a psychosocial risk assessment process, and Safe Work have actually provided a template on the end of the document for those of you that would like to go down that road. Next, you could do a site walk, actually go out and about and observe work and behaviours. This helps to identify the gaps between work seen versus work done, but also will help you to identify any issues with the workplace itself. Are workers being isolated or exposed to dodgy conditions? You will also see the work and how it's being performed. Are the workers being rushed? Are they confused about certain tasks? Finally, you'll also get to see those critical interactions between people, like the supervisor and the workers, or the workers and other workers. You will be able to note if the interactions are respectful. You should also take into consideration whether the culture at the workplace supports or tolerates harmful behaviours. Even something as petty as name-calling teasing, gendered jokes, or crude language. You could also review available information. Type of information that you might review could include incidents, injury data, worker complaints, workplace inspections, task observations, absenteeism rates, exit interviews, health and safety committee meeting records, and basically anything else that might be documented that captures this type of data. From this data, you could then perform trending and analysis, and you may identify further themes. Ensure that there is a reporting mechanism in place for hazard reporting that has the ability to capture psychosocial hazards and risks, and this will need to be able to protect workers where possible and allow for anonymous reporting also where possible. The interesting thing here that I would like to note is that there is a slight theme throughout the Code of Practice which makes reference to anonymous reporting. I've unfortunately witnessed firsthand how critical anonymous reporting is when it comes to psychosocial hazards, and further to that, how ensuring the privacy and confidentiality of a reporter is critical to not greatening that risk of harm even further. I personally have put a harassment claim in against a colleague in one of my previous roles, and I was prepared for it to be known amongst the management team because I reported to a project team with a side report to a health and safety function. However, I was not prepared to sit at pre-shift and for pretty much the entire work crew to know that I was the one responsible for this gentleman no longer being at our site. The fact that he got transferred and not terminated is a whole nother story. But you feel like you're the one being isolated and ostracised for doing the right thing, and it definitely isn't a great feeling to have to deal with. So ensuring that confidentiality is really critical here. The other really significant aspect that needs to be spoken about is that any psychosocial hazard that gets reported by workers needs to be taken seriously and appropriately. In one of my other mining roles, I had a worker come to me as he was experiencing some anguish in his personal life, and it was now impacting his work. He was visibly upset, and the things that he had going on were really traumatic. His role was a high-risk one where he had the potential to be fatally injured if his mind wasn't on the job. When I asked why he hadn't reported this directly to his manager, he said he had, but it had been laughed off. So he thought he would come and let me know to see what I thought. The worker was a day or so away from a shift changeover and really didn't want to go home early. So my recommendation was to have him taken off the tools and put on light duties until he returned from his time off. I spoke with his manager to request that this occur, and his manager's response was a laugh, followed by, "He's just a sissy. The only reason he's saying that he's upset was because he wants time off the tools and wants to come in and work in the air condition of the safety office." The manager completely disregarded the seriousness of a worker currently experiencing a personal situation that was impacting him psychologically and putting his health and safety at risk. Even more ridiculous here was that the manager was actually contributing to that psychosocial harm. I would like to say that that was an isolated event. Unfortunately, from what I witnessed throughout my career, that worker wasn't alone. So what can you do if you've identified that your organisation does have psychosocial hazards and risk present? Firstly, with the design of work including job demands and tasks, consider how the work is designed, and this will support you to eliminate hazards at the source and at the organisational level. Think about the rostering and when the work is required to be conducted. What time of the day is it? What kind of resources are required? For systems of work, we're talking about organisational rules, policies, procedures and work practices used to organise, manage and carry out work. Having an effective system in place which provides support but also manages the demands of a job can assist here. The design and layout of environmental conditions of the workplace, including safe means of entering and exiting the workplace and welfare facilities. For this, things like ensuring if you're in a forward-facing, customer-orientated environment, that workers have the ability to get away from those angry or abusive or aggressive customers in a safe manner. When it comes to the design and layout of workers' accommodation, anyone who's stayed in camps knows sometimes the security and privacy of camp rooms leaves much to be desired. So for this point, ensuring worker accommodation does provide privacy and does not contribute to the risk of violence or harassment. With plant, substances and structures at the workplace. Plant, structures and substances used at work can introduce psychosocial hazards where they create that physical hazard that is not adequately controlled. Things like noise or dust or vibration that remain unaddressed after a period of time will impact on a worker from a psychosocial perspective, so ensuring that any faults are identified and addressed immediately. This can also help alleviate some of the pressures with job demands, as once a bit of plant or equipment is back in action, it can be productive again, and vice versa. Workplace interactions or behaviours. Ensuring you have supportive leadership with positive relationships and professional and respectful interactions can help to minimise a whole range of psychosocial hazards. If you have a poor health and safety culture, then you have the extra long and winding road, as you will need to address why workers do not seek out support or report hazards and incidents accordingly, or why they don't participate in consultation. Leaders need to be held accountable and managed accordingly for their behaviour. Finally, while you're implementing all of the above controls, please don't forget that information, training, instruction and supervision will need to be provided to workers to ensure the effectiveness of a variety of your chosen controls. Alrighty, as I mentioned earlier, the entire Model Code of Practice document is 54 pages long and I've only covered a few sections, but hopefully enough to give you a quick snapshot and pique your interest. It is a great document that everyone should read, and hopefully each of the states within Australia will take it on board and actually adopt it. Before I close off this episode, I want to say that I am thoroughly enjoying the interactions I'm having with each of you that are choosing to reach out and contact me directly. I'm also still blown away that my voice is now reaching places like South Africa, the USA and New Zealand. So please do keep reaching out, keep speaking out and keep interacting either via commenting or sending me a direct message or email. Don't forget, there's still some exciting bonus episodes to be released with some fantastic special guests coming up. Until then, thanks for joining in. Stay safe.